It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with your host, Jamie Dew, Chief Librarian Thomas Senna, and featuring Matt Ardill. And now, curator of the hall, Jamie Dew.
Hey there, thank you so much. Please wipe your feet before entering the SNL Hall of Fame. We've got an image to uphold here, and we got to keep this place spick and span, which is precisely the phrase that prompted me to order this great pop filter. Spick and span. Oh my goodness gracious. I hope you're doing well. I hope everyone is bundled up tightly as we roll into this holiday season and it gets a little colder wherever you are, or maybe it's getting warmer if you're on the flip side. I don't know. But it is getting colder where I am, and grayer and more difficult to persevere with the days. But here I am persevering with you. And I cannot wait because we've got a major announcement to make. On January 9th, we will announce our 15th nominee to the SNL Hall of Fame. And on January 10th, we will open voting for those first 15 nominees, along with the holdovers from last year. That's right, we're breaking down voting into two halves this year, slightly different than the way we did it last year, but nevertheless, it will get the job done. You will be voting on the 15 nominees and the holdovers. It's going to be exciting. Voting will run through to February 10th. So you'll have a whole month to vote. Now, what does this mean for you? Well, this means you need to make sure that you are registered to vote. You can do this really easily. You can click on any of the links that I tweet out, Instagram out, Reddit out, Facebook out, or you can go to the website snlhof.com, and there's an easy way to register to vote there. You just click on the voting tab and you'll be prompted to register to vote. Once you do so, you'll have access to the nominee guide, and you can start planning out your strategy, how you will cast your votes this year. I hope you've been playing along at home though so far and have a good idea of what you'll do. But it's going to be you're going to be thrown for a loop with those holdovers, I'm sure. But we've got to get some of those writers in. And the musical guests. It'll be interesting to see if that comes to fruition or not. But that is the major news announcement. February 10th, voting ends. January 10th, voting opens. Make sure you're registered to vote beforehand. And that's what I've got to say about that. Coming up in the next segment, we'll hear from Thomas Senna as he meets with Matti Price, and they have a great conversation about our next nominee, and that's Candice Bergen. But before that, we have to hear from our friend Matt in his Minutia Minute. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Hey, good, thanks. And yourself?
I'm excellent, actually. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, Candice Bergen, Hollywood and entertainment royalty. She was born on May 9th, 1946. Her first time hosting was November 8th, 1975. So she goes back to the start. She is the first woman to host the show. So she got to play alongside the original cast. She hosted 5 times and is one of the earliest 5-timers. Her fifth time hosting was May 19th, 1990 in season 20, along with Dana Carvey, Victoria Jackson, Mike Myers. Her most recent appearance was February 26th, 2022, where she helped induct John Mulaney into the 5-timer club.
Right.
Yeah, so she is she's one of those people who was so entwined in those early days. Like her and Steve Martin, they almost felt like a part of the SNL family in a lot of ways. A lot of the really iconic sketches of those early days are sketches that she was in. Like my favorite two from those early days are Third World Interview and then Extremely Stupid, where you could watch Gilda just like, she's like, Candice broke. She just broke hard, and Gilda just kept rolling like a total pro. And personally, my absolute favorite. This is Consumer Probe with Erwin Mainway.
Yes.
It's just a classic. You've got Dan Aykroyd at its peak, Dan Aykroyd, and you have Candice playing it totally straight. Like, I mean, and I want a Johnny Switchblade. Who doesn't want a Johnny Switchblade?
Right.
Sometimes Barbie gets stabbed. That's, that happens. Now, she said that her first appearance on SNL was like being shot out of a cannon. It's the
Bet
pure,
it was.
yeah, the purest
Cocaine-filled cannon.
A cocaine-filled cannon. Yeah, it's the purest, most exhilarating serum of terror. Again, cocaine. Now, like I said, she's Hollywood royalty. Her father was ventriloquist Edgar Bergen, who had popular dummies Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snerd, featured in a lot of like 30s, 40s, 50s movies. She auditioned at age 9 to be one of the original Mouseketeers. Didn't make it, even though her dad was friends with Walt. But yeah, I mean, she's appeared on The Muppet Show along with her father, and it's actually the only father-daughter pair to ever both appear on The Muppet Show. So she has a real history in Hollywood.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. She beat her dad. She was on the Muppet Show, and her dad was on The Muppet Show the next season. So yeah. But and the interesting thing is, that interview sketch, people are like, oh, why would Candice Bergen be Candice Bergen doing an interview? Well, it's because she was a journalist. She was a photojournalist and a political journalist who did actual interviews out in different troubled areas around the world, and won awards for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she's a really interesting person. She worked as a photographer. She worked, like I said, a journalist. She's written novels. She's written a play. She's a lifelong activist. Weirdly dated Donald Trump. She said, like, he showed up dressed in a 3-piece suit, burgundy patent leather loafers, driving a burgundy limousine. The date was uneventful, and there was no physical contact. So she is very clear about how she feels on Mr. Trump. But yeah, she's a really interesting character, and I think a very worthy addition to the SNL Hall of Fame. She has a lot of legacy and a lot of connections to the very foundations of the show.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Yes, I'm joined by Matti Price to discuss the wonderful Candice Candy Bergen. Matti, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for bringing me back.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, season 1, you did. I know you did the Gilda Radner episode, which I was a huge fan of. Yes. Did you do any other episodes, or was it just Gilda in season 1?
No, I feel like I did 3 of them. I don't know how many others have aired. We did them all in one sitting, and then they got chopped up. So I feel like I did Randy Newman for musical guest.
Yeah.
That might have already happened. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you were a good luck charm with Gilda, because she made the SNL Hall of Fame. She was part of that.
Damn right she did.
Damn right she did. She was part of that season 1 class. So great work on stating your case for Gilda Radner. That was great.
I'm going to take zero credit.
We'll
I'm gonna
give
take
most
0.
of the credit to Gilda herself, I think.
You take a look at her work, it speaks for itself. Anyway,
Yeah, definitely. So today we're talking about Candice Bergen, and there is a tie-in that we'll probably get to with Gilda Radner there, so a little kind of season 1 and season 2 synergy here on the podcast. But as far as Candice goes, so other than hosting SNL, I only really know Candice Bergen thoroughly from her time on Murphy Brown.
I think a lot of people our age and younger and even older, they're not super aware of Candice Bergen, and there's no reason that they should be. She is very much, up until Murphy Brown, I think she was very much a person who was famous for being famous. You know, her father was probably, or no, I will say he was definitively the most popular entertainment figure on the planet for a little while there. So she was born into a very famous family. And for listeners that don't know, her father was Edgar Bergen, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy was famously a ventriloquist who was and this is my absolute favorite thing about show business, he was a ventriloquist on the radio.
Oh my gosh.
How can you tell if his lips are moving, right?
Yeah, no kidding. That's hilarious.
But that's really, he's in a few movies and stuff, but really he was like a popular radio personality and considered very funny at the time. And certainly, like, in terms of scripting ventriloquism bits, he's the first person to break through into kind of a more naturalistic style where he plays the straight man. And the joke is not just that he's making the dummy talk, but that actually there are real jokes in there. And he created that dynamic of the dummy hating the guy operating him and being mean to him, which is sort of like the standard ventriloquism thing, right?
Right.
And got very famous and very rich doing that. And so she was, their daughter, and he referred to her as the dummy's younger sister. And she was not a super happy child, from what I'm led to believe, because, he was not maybe like the most present father. And so she grew up in this sort of like famous bubble, Beverly Hills, Hollywood. And she was a model. And she was on a lot of fashion magazines starting in the late 60s, wanted to transition to acting. And I think up until the time she did SNL, again, she's pretty famous for being famous. She had been in some movies. I particularly like a movie from the early 70s called Soldier Blue, which is like a very, very critical Western about, basically like a revisionist Western about how badly Native Americans were treated in the frontier. And it was a flop as a result, at least in North America. But she's very good in it and quite funny, actually. And you can tell that, like, there's a lot more going on there than just somebody who is pretty and getting on magazine covers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So it was maybe a little bit of, I don't want to say risk, but maybe on Lauren's part to ask somebody like Candice Bergen to host. She hosted the 4th show of season 1, so she was on the ground floor in that. So would you say Lauren took a chance by bringing Candy on?
In my opinion, no, but I think there's a few dimensions to that. But so look, before we go on, I want to clear out the elephant in the room. Nobody listening to this show is like, here's a serious contender for the Hall. Like, I understand. Like, I understand. But let's just lay out some numbers and some facts just to, like, get it out of the way, to say, like, here's some stuff that maybe puts her back in the running. First woman to host the show. First person to host more than once. First woman in the 5-Timers Club. And I think with good reason. So my own speculation about her hosting that 4th show is, if you actually watch that 4th show, or especially really like the first, I would say almost all of the first season of SNL, they totally don't know what kind of show it is yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, they really are not sure. And I think for the most part with the hosts, they haven't quite gravitated to that place where the host's job is to sit in the writer's room and help them shape material for comedy and then go out and perform that comedy, which is what that show is now, right? I think it really was viewed as more like a pretty regular variety show hosting gig. Carlin's host on the first one, is not particularly involved with anything that the Not Ready for Primetime players are doing. He's just hosting a variety show. She is just hosting a variety show. She's in some sketches because that's what the host of a variety show is supposed to do. But she, and I think pretty smartly, in the first few seasons that she was on the show, she really played the straight man in all her sketches, which is exactly what her father did. Her persona, just like his, is just to be the thing that the crazy people are reacting against. So, like, her best sketch is the Irving Mainway sketch, which is the the guy that makes the very dangerous toys for children. So she's the host of that show, that like Consumer Probe show, where she's like, really, a big bag of glass? That's a toy? You're gonna hurt somebody. And like she's really good at like not like drawing into the nuttiness and letting it just kind of play off of her, right?
Yeah, I can tell she understands the comedy behind playing that role.
Yeah,
like she doesn't.
She knows exactly what she's supposed to do.
Exactly. It's not like she's just kind of going through the motions and saying the lines and trusting the writers. I can tell that she's confident in the material and her role in making it comedic.
Yeah. So my feeling is that as a person who was famous for being famous, and Lorne Michaels was already pretty well connected to celebrities, I think they were probably just friends on some level. And she did the show because he needed hosts, right? And if you look at the hosts until he lands Buck Henry, he doesn't really know what to do with the hosts. He just knows they have to have one.
Yeah, they're like traffic cops in a
kind of, yeah. Like Richard Pryor, I think, made big inroads into figuring out how a host could be in the show, which is the one that happened right before her second appearance. She also, another thing for the Hall of Fame, she hosted the very first and the second Christmas episodes.
Yeah, she became
which is kind of a big deal, right? She was the Christmas episode late
for the first couple seasons. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's all kind of swirling in the air. They're just looking for someone who can traffic cop, as you say, like deal with like pushing things around and making sure they're like a friendly face. Her monologues in the first set of shows, the first 3 shows, they're not very, like, they're fine. They're just kind of like, here's the show we're about to present to you. They're really standard monologues. They're not heavy on jokes. They're not really what we think of as the monologue. Because again, I don't think they really, like, first of all, they didn't have a writer who just wrote monologues the way they do now, right? But like, they don't, she's just there to say like, here's the show. We're going to show you some stuff. And by the way, these are the musical guests. And, let me just make sure we get through this to the end.
For sure. And she hosted, her first stint was November 8th, 1975. As we mentioned, that was season 1, episode 4. And even though that was more of you're right, like the host had a different role back then. It was more of a variety show. One thing stood out to me, though, as far as her personality and seeing that how she meshed with the original cast, was a spot that she did with Gilda where they just sat
the thing
down
where they're sitting together
and they talk about femininity. And I thought that was really neat. That's not something that SNL always does. I mean, I remember even over the last 30 plus years since I've been watching the show, Dolly Parton did something like that, but they never really go to that well. No. And I thought that was a really neat to see the chemistry between she and Gilda.
And really amazing to see them just be themselves and realize that, like, this is a compelling conversation, even though it's really not a bit or there's no punchline here. It's not. Yeah. And actually,
jokes, there's like kidding around and stuff, but you're right.
But it's really like hanging out with them at a party or something.
Well, just tell me something. Have you ever had a guy ask you out on a date over the phone, and then he shows up at the door and he goes away, doesn't want to take you out at all after he takes one look at you?
No.
Oh.
But I've had him not call back.
Oh, this is the happiest day of my life.
I know.
Well, tell me what else goes wrong for you. I love it.
Well, here's when I feel awkward. I feel awkward around these new little skinny guys. The little tiny ones with the body shirts and the long silky hair.
Right.
The ones you could break in half.
Right. When you sit next to them in the back of a car, you look down, you notice that your thigh is twice the size of theirs.
And I think it's interesting because it's obviously set against the backdrop of them having just lost the ERA vote. And there's a really good line in that little conversation where she asked Gilda if she voted for ERA. Gilda said, no, I was working. I couldn't vote. But it's okay because what did she say that's crazy misconception? Oh, she said, I don't know if I could be in a bathroom if a guy came into the stall beside me. As if that's what the Equal Rights Amendment was supposed to be. was supposed, right?
Yeah. So there was
Like,
a little bit of character work, like subtle character work in there still, probably like a
yeah,
exaggerated version of herself or both
yeah,
of them in
yeah.
that conversation. Yeah.
But it's really remarkable. Yeah, it's the standout thing from that episode for sure.
She does have a little bit in the land shark sketch as well that she closed the land shark sketch, which I thought was
That's
pretty
right.
neat. But I think that was just overall what that showed to me was, they loved her as a host. She got along with the cast, and that the proof was in the pudding because episode 8, she's back.
Yeah. So the original host of episode 8 had to bow out at the last minute. I can't remember who it was. And so it was like a last minute fill in, but she's the one they went to. And I think it's really because they just liked her. They liked having her around and she liked them. And she described in her monologue, she describes the show as her Christmas present to herself.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Which is kind of like a super nice way to think about it. Like she talked about it in the later 2 episodes in the 80s when she was on with the sort of Dennis Miller and then Mike Myers casts season 13 and 15. She said that SNL was the show that allowed her to be funny, which I think is really, really interesting. So if you look at it in the context of her sort of coming into her own with Murphy Brown and becoming like truly a household comedic icon, I would say for the time on the level of somebody like Mary Tyler Moore or, Lucille Ball, like a really like the female comedy sitcom person for that period of time. I do think that SNL plays a part in that and sort of giving her that confidence to be able to take that on, right?
Yeah.
And she's also she's visibly much better in those later episodes. She gets way more interesting stuff to do, and she's way better at doing it.
Yeah, that's something I noted too. We talked about her 2 hosting stints in season 1. She got a little more to do in that second episode, but I wanted to highlight in those early stints that Christmas episode in season 2. That was in December of 76. And that, for SNL geeks who keep track of such things, I think that's considered honestly one of the best episodes of that era, and maybe one of the better episodes the show has seen in its history. You had some classic sketches, and she had a lot to do. So, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about her third hosting stint, which was that Christmas episode in 1976. I had some stuff highlighted, but do anything pop out to you from that one?
I think that's the one with the Irving Mainway sketch, which is certainly it's like for that era, it's top 5 sketch for me. I think it's, especially Johnny Switchblade, which I think is maybe like one of the funniest visual gags, prop gags ever on the show. Just the way the blades pop out and how little they are and how goofy it looks. Like I love it.
And what about this innocent rubber doll, which you market under the name Johnny Switchblade? Press his head, and 2 sharp knives spring from his arms. Mr. Mainway, I'm afraid this is by no means a safe toy.
Okay, I just want to correct you on one thing here, okay? First of all, the full name of this product, as appears in stores all over the country, is Johnny Switchblade Adventure Punk. Now, I mean, nothing goes wrong. These little girls buy them, they play games, they make up stories, nobody gets hurt, So Barbie takes a knife once in a while, or Ken gets cut, there's no harm in it, as far as I can see,
I see, fine.
Yes.
I know, in the bag of glass too, and
the bag of glass is great. I like when he tries to justify it by going, they could see rainbows in it. It's about refracted light.
Yeah, and kids pick up glass anyway. We're just giving them what they want.
We're just giving them what the market wants.
That's great. And you're right. You had brought up Candice, how she was the straight person in those sketches, and the way she asked those questions and her reactions, her earnest reactions to Irwin Mainway, that was just so perfect, because you need that balance. You definitely
in order for that character to work at all, he has to be being interviewed by a person who is deadpanning the whole way. It's that's such a good dynamic.
She actually had a really famous moment with Gilda Radner in the Right to Extreme Stupidity League.
Yes, where she blows it, and it's very fun.
Gee, this milk isn't too good. I'm still thirsty.
Well, that's because you poured it in your purse, you see.
Oh.
You're not too bright, are you, Fern? I mean, whatever your name was.
Lisa!
As a matter of fact, you're extremely stupid.
Well, you're right, Fern. You know, and I'm proud of it. You know, we all can't be brainy like Fern here.
Yeah, it was like a classic line flub, and they both handle it really well. And that's one of the first like an early famous example of breaking on the show.
Is it right? Yeah, because and also the way she breaks is so generous. She's laughing so hard at Gilda through the whole sketch, just so amused by how she's sort of pulling it off. Like you can see her sitting on the couch, just really enjoying the sketch while she's in it. But yeah, she flubs her line. She calls Gilda's character her character's name. And the sketch is about people who are irretrievably stupid.
Right.
And so Gilda's response is basically to say, no, your name is Fern. Maybe you're the one that needs help.
Yeah. She said, we can't all be brainy like Fern here, which I think was probably part of the script, but it worked. So it was like a flub that was accidentally meta because of what the sketch was. That that was great. And I think you say Candice was so good natured about that. I mean, she tried to hide it, but kind of barely. She just let the moment wash over her.
The one last first that she has, which I do, and I'm not sure which show it's in. It might be in the Christmas one, but I think it is actually in that second Christmas one. I think she's the first host to have the whole cast come out to say the goodbyes.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know which Christmas episode.
But I actually think that's really a kind of a cool thing about her, that she would have said, well, I'm not just going to wave goodbye myself. We all did it. Let's all go out on stage. And it just shows like what a genuinely like nice, lovely sort of person she was to do that. Right. I'm sure that nobody told her to do it. It sounds like it would have been just an organic thing. And it's become like one of the nicest sort of traditions of the show, is that it's at the end, you're like, oh man, it took a lot of people to make this. This is pretty good.
She had love for the cast. She respected them. She loved working with them. So yeah, that was so cool. This
is not a Candice Bergen thing, but my other favorite thing about that season 2 Christmas show is that the musical guest is Frank Zappa, which has to be the worst idea for Christmas music guest that I have ever heard. Because
so weird.
Not only do they have him, but his songs are they are lengthy. There's one that's like 8 minutes long or something. I was like, what is this? Who is sitting on the night before the Saturday before Christmas going like, yes, I need this in my life.
I need to watch slime come out of the TV monitors. That was an interesting performance there by Frank Zappa. He appeared in his sketch too, in the Killer Trees sketch.
In the Killer Tree sketch, yes.
Yeah.
Which also she's very good. She's very good in deadpan in that sketch, which is sort of like a dragnet. There's also a really good bit at the beginning where they sort of send up Casablanca for her monologue, which I thought was really sweet. And Belushi is made up to look like Bogart. And suddenly I was like, holy shit, he really looks like him. It's really effective. Whatever they did, he looks thinner. I think he actually probably was thinner because of all the coke. He probably, at that point, he's probably at his thinnest that he was at in the show. But yeah, he pulls off that Bogart swagger in that sketch. It's actually really good.
That was a good monologue. I think that was Candice's first kind of not cookie cutter sort of monologue. So this one was she wouldn't come out of the dressing room because of Belushi. Right.
It's the fourth wall breaking. They go backstage and try to get her out. And it's because she's in love with Belushi and can't quit him.
Yeah.
And he's ignoring her. And it's a sketch that Lauren is in. I think it's one of the earliest ones that Lauren was in. And he's basically like, I can't understand how Belushi keeps doing this to all the women. And it's part of this running gag that this pretty, let's call him fat. Let's call him fat. He was a fat guy and maybe not traditionally attractive, was somehow the one that every woman swooned over. They did the same joke in Blues Brothers. It's sort of definitely a running thing for Belushi to be have this Svengali hold on beautiful women that no one could quite figure out, because it is funny to think about, right?
Yeah, super fun monologue. I want to go back to that Killer Trees sketch because I think that was just such good melodramatic acting from Candice while she was describing the tree that killed Gilda's character in the sketch. Candice just really played up that melodrama, but for laughs.
Just calm down here, all right? calm down and describe the killer to our police artist here, Sergeant Nagy. Try to describe it now. Was he tall, short?
Yeah. He was very tall. He was so tall. And really bushy. Very bushy. With a lot of really neat ornaments. Oh, God.
You could tell that she really understood the comedy behind what she was saying. She knew how to play it up. She knew the right beats to hit. She really impressed me in that Killer Treat sketch.
It's also for those early seasons, it's a pretty strong sketch conceptually. Like it has a really good through line. It actually has a beginning, middle, and end. The story sort of holds up as a vehicle for the comedy, which is that all the Christmas trees are sentient and they're murdering people. And they go through that section where they're like, let's get the police sketch artist to draw the Christmas tree, which is like such a good dumb idea. And the Frank Zappa cameo is that there's 2 Christmas trees and Frank Zappa in a police lineup, and she has to pick out the Christmas tree, and she's like, they all look alike to me. I can't tell.
Saying Frank Zappa looked like a Christmas tree. Yes, that was.
Yes, yeah,
that was a great bit. So yeah, that was for the listeners. That was season 2, episode 10. And I want to run this down again because it's just a classic episode. You had a great monologue. You had the Santee rap, which Candice was not in, but that was kind of a Dan Aykroyd pitchman sort of short thing. You had the Irwin Mainway. That was the debut of that character. The Right to Extreme Stupidity League, the Killer Trees. There was also a song that Candice did the introduction to, Let's Kill Gary Gilmore for Christmas. So it was all the stuff that people remember wrapped up into one episode. Really classic episode.
It's not the one that has the char house, right? That the one where you kill your own steer.
I believe that was the first. That was the Christmas episode from season 1. I believe that was Dan Aykroyd and Gilda. Yeah,
that's one of the first ones where Danny just goes a mile a minute in the talking, and it's like that's the point of the sketch. It's just how fast can he deliver the material.
In that Santee rap one too, in this Christmas episode from season 2, that's what that one is too. Let's just pull Danny's string and let him go.
Yeah. What was really interesting was then seeing the ones that she did during the Murphy Brown era for me.
Yeah, I want to talk about those ones.
So it's clear right away, I think, that she's immediately more comfortable and better, because there's one of them is a Thanksgiving episode as opposed to Christmas. I think it's the first time she came back, season 13.
Yes.
And they wrote her, and maybe she helped, this excellent monologue that she delivered super well, where she talks about having a pet turkey growing up.
I could have had a dog or a cat or even a pony, but my turkey Larry was the best pet a girl could ever have. He let me dress him up in doll's clothes. He would fetch. He could dance. Well, not really. I would hold up his wings and pull him around the room to music. He would sit at the dinner table and follow the conversation. Once I saw him pull a man from a burning car. I would still have him today, but one Thanksgiving I overheard our cook saying how we wouldn't have to buy a turkey this year with Larry around.
That monologue is deranged, and she delivers it perfectly, and it's really funny. And it's not just funny for her; it's genuinely like a killer monologue. And I think it's well worth checking out as kind of like an example of where she sort of got to as a performer.
Yeah, I agree. One of the big notes that I had, and we'll go into why, but her 4th episode specifically, that was November of '87. That was actually my favorite of her hosting gigs because of like what you said. She was doing more heavy lifting in the sketches. She was seemed more comfortable, but then that was just in a period of the show where they just had the host do more, just kind of in general, where there's more emphasis.
Well, you could tell right away that it's a much smoother running machine by the time she came back. The really interesting thing is I actually think the sketch, the Sidney Biddle-Barrows first Thanksgiving sketch, where she's decided that the real story of the first Thanksgiving is that she's running a brothel.
Yes.
And she's very good in it. And it's again like, oh, there's a lot more to do, and this is good. And then that sketch is almost shockingly offensive in almost every way that you could imagine.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up.
It's actually hard to watch. It's so bad. It's so kind of gross about the sort of white people playing Native Americans, calling them Indians. Every stereotype hits the wall. It's like even for the time, I was like, this is impressively offensive.
Yeah. And this was
None
1987.
of it is her fault, but like
this was 35 years ago.
Yeah. But still, it was 1987. Like it was not 1937.
Right.
Like I'm
exactly.
like, guys, this is come on, Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that sometimes that era of SNL, especially as it relates to different races that some of the cast members would play in sketches, even at the time, it's kind of weird, but it was still somewhat dicey, but it was still somewhat accepted in comedy. Nowadays, for good reason, that wouldn't fly.
I think it's just a bit of a content warning for anybody that wants to watch that episode now. Like, be prepared. It is not cool. It's not cool.
Yeah, and it was sort of a take on a real life event. This lady who was called the Mayflower Madam.
Yes.
Back then.
Who was she was a patrician descendant of the original Pilgrims who had run a very successful escort service out of New York City.
Right.
And had been discovered. And so it was a big cause celeb.
Something that from this episode that did hold up, that might be my favorite Candice sketch from all her times hosting.
Can I guess? I know what you're going to say.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Is it the killing of Anne Boleyn?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Do you want to talk about that?
That is a Python-worthy sketch. It is a perfect sketch. I would say that it is perfect, and not just because of the writing, but the performance as well. But it's such a good idea and executed perfectly. And I don't really want to give away the spoilers of the sketch because it's so good. But basically, the setup is that she's Anne Boleyn. Henry VIII has decided that he's had enough of her and is going to murder her. And famously, of course, that is what happened. But she's given a choice of how she would like the death to transpire. And the choice becomes increasingly complexified and increasingly ridiculous the longer the sketch goes on. And it genuinely is like such a good idea for a sketch.
Yeah,
like
it's such a Python sketch. That's a great way to describe that. And that it was to me it was rare that Candice got to play a goofier character in a sketch, which this was. I mean, the delivery was still pretty straight, but it was very goofy for Candice.
The material she's got is
the actual material is really goofy and funny. It's just great writing. And I don't know who wrote this. This seems like a Jack Handy kind of thing, but I can't confirm who wrote this sketch. But it's just so clever.
I don't know,
Phil
but
Hartman,
I'd love to know because
I need to try to.
Who else
dig
was
a
on the
little
staff
more.
then? Who's in the writers' room at that point?
That might have been before. I think maybe Robert Schmeigel was on by that point. It was November of '87. That was before Conan, I believe. I don't think Conan was there. Don't know if Odenkirk was there. Jack Handy was there.
Sketch.
It feels like it would be a Conan sketch.
It feels like Conan or like something Sam Simon would write.
Yeah.
Like it's very smart, right?
Yeah, it's completely smart. And she has a good back and forth with Phil Hartman. So she gets to play with Phil Hartman, and they do snappy dialogue with each other. That impressed me that Candice just fit so well with Phil Hartman.
I will say that I had a feeling it was going to be the one sketch that we both agreed on 100%.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, I think it's the one where when I was watching it today, my wife came up from downstairs and said, "What are you laughing at?" Because I was genuinely like cackling, laughing, watching it. So
yeah, it's just so smart. And she appeared one other time. Her most recent hosting gig was May 19th, 1990. She unofficially, at that time, entered the Five Timers Club. Right. So that was in season 15.
Because who actually christened? Was it Tom Hanks?
It was Tom Hanks.
Who christened Five Timers?
Yeah, the first official kind of sketch revolving around a Five Timers thing was Tom Hanks.
Which she is in, right? She's in that first Five Timers sketch. She's in the lounge.
Is she sitting in the lounge?
Yeah, I think she is.
Okay.
Yeah. She's definitely in the one where I think Drew Barrymore gets in because there's all the women who are in that one.
Yeah. She's appeared in a few of them since the last time she hosted. I went back and watched all of these episodes, but something that I forgot about was that she played Garth's mom in Wayne's World.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the mom that Wayne fantasizes about and everything, and she was just so charming. She was like perfect in that role.
I think what's really interesting about Candice Bergen is that she has managed her career really smartly to manage past what was essentially keeping her at this level of famous but not talented, famous but not successful.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's like, and it's not because of like, oh, she did one thing and then one thing and then one thing. It's obvious that she's a person that plugs away and chips away at it until she figures it out. Right. Murphy Brown, but then also like incredibly successful on Boston Legal, like has figured out how to move into like this sort of older, matronly, whatever you want to call it, like phase of her career where she's now like a very senior person, but she's still showing up and stuff and quite smartly. And I just think like, you know, there's a happy, satisfied, well, like really person who really is comfortable in her own skin and really understands herself and probably like was on that path, even in that, you know, even that first episode that she did where she has that conversation with Gilda. It's pretty clear that she's like a together person, right?
Yeah.
Has the right idea about her own like weirdly beautiful good looks and is not like fazed by it. And I just think she's an impressive human being.
Yeah, absolutely. She has confidence and she's authoritative. I think that's why she played Murphy Brown so well, because that's what that character was. Is an authoritative character trying to navigate this television world, trying to navigate being like a newly single mother, all of this stuff. And Candice played that so well. She has a sketch in her last episode that kind of played off of her Murphy Brown persona. It's called She Does It All, where she was a boss who does like every task during a meeting. She makes the copies, she gives people the coffee, she leads the meeting, and she just plays that authoritative persona so well.
Okay, yesterday I got a fax from our Paris distributor about an investment opportunity in bond, but we'll have to move fast. I'd like to discuss it as soon as I'm done Xeroxing copies.
Miss Powell, perhaps I should get someone to do that.
Oh, no, it's no problem. This will just take a few minutes.
I know, it's just that your time is very valuable. Shouldn't you delegate jobs like this to other people?
Tom, in case you're not aware, I'm a president of a multinational corporation with 400 people in my employ. I think I know a little something about delegating authority. Oh, damn. Angela!
Oh, yes, Miss Powell. Is there something I can do?
Yes, the copier jammed. Call Xerox and tell them I'll bring it over in an hour.
And she appeared on the show in Five Timers sketches. You had mentioned she was in the Jonah Hill Five Timers sketch with Drew Barrymore, and Tina Fey appeared in that one too. I love that one because Candice had a lot of dialogue, and that was sort of Candice leading. She wasn't just kind of sitting there while Steve Martin led the Five Timers Club, dominated the proceedings. Like Candice really driving that bus.
Welcome to the Five Timers Club, Seth.
Oh, no, I'm not Seth Rogen. I'm actually Jonah Hill.
And that's not the same guy?
Hayes and the new guy. I know you're very familiar with my work, Candy.
Sure.
So...
It's always nice to see her pop up, because it's sparing. Yeah. It's sparing since 1990.
And again, she's someone that she gets along with everybody. Like the fact that she's easily mixed with Jonah Hill, can easily mix with Drew Barrymore, can easily mix with Tina Fey, like all these people, these different generational people. And she just is, you know, for someone that could be pretty distant, pretty icy, pretty difficult, given her background, she's none of those things.
No.
Right? She's just this like very sweet, genuine person.
Yeah, she has a somewhat serious delivery, but it doesn't seem like she takes herself too seriously. And that's so awesome. She also appeared in Justin Timberlake's Five Timers Club sketch. That was in season 38.
Oh, Candice Bergen, the first female member of the Five Timers Club.
And I would like to say something. I, too, wish we had a second bathroom, but while we're all sharing, could you please try to remember to leave the toilet seat down?
Don't look at me.
I didn't do it. I go in the sink.
That was maybe honestly like the best Five Timers Club sketch. I'm an SNL geek, but I've never gone so far as to rank Five Timers Club sketches. But after watching it, I would have to say that would be hard to top. Justin Timberlake's in particular. So much was happening. Candice made an appearance. That was just such a really fun sketch. And then her most recent appearance, February of 2022, John Mulaney joins the Five Timers Club, and Who do we see? Steve Martin, Paul Rudd, and we see Candy Bergen.
Welcome to the Five Timers Club.
Thank you, Candice. Wow, this place is amazing.
Well, congratulations, John. And let me be the first person to say, who are you?
Well, Candice, you wouldn't know me, but if you have a niece or a son who's bad at sports, they might.
So as a viewer, somebody who really enjoys Candice Bergen, who understands her history with SNL, what does it mean to you when you see her pop up on the show in current times?
That it's, it has become, given that she was the first woman to host and the first woman to get it to the fifth time, I think it's a shorthand for the show about, like, oh, we got the really legitimate five-timers here. Like, there's a certain amount of, notary public, like, seal of approval, like, yes, you're an officially accepted person because I am here, Candice Bergen. So obviously this is, like, for real, right?
Yeah. And I love when the show just acknowledges its history like that. That's why I love the five timers thing just in general. It's a good chance for the show to go back to its history. But when somebody like Candice Bergen appears, like I said, sparingly, 2013, 2018, 2022, that's just, to me, acknowledging that Lorne and the show still value their history and they still value the people who made the show what it was. And Candice,
I imagine that they really like each other.
Yeah.
Lorne Michaels is partly famous for having a lot of famous friends, and I think he probably just, they're friends.
Yeah. Half of which are named Paul.
That's right.
Yeah, but Lorne definitely seems like he has a lot of famous friends, and he seems like he gets along with a lot of people, and Candice seems very affable, and yeah, you're right. He and Candice probably, or Candy, that's what Lorne and a lot of people from the show refer to her as.
That is how people refer to her, certainly in the 1970s, right? Yeah.
So, putting a bow on this, why don't you give your final case for Candice Bergen as an SNL Hall of Famer? Just kind of sum it up.
So I think the pull for me is, not only is she there first in many ways, but her own development as a performer is mirrored a little bit by the show itself. And it's sort of like, if you take it as a body of work, she goes from being just someone who is sort of like a variety show host to someone who's good in sketches to someone who is kind of like a host emeritus, somebody who gives weight to the idea of having hosted many times. And, as Dave Letterman was famous for saying, longtime friend of the show. Like, I think there is something to be said for that in terms of getting into the Hall of Fame. Just a genuine, generous, lovely person who I think always enriches the shows that she's in.
And that's it. That's Matti Price and our very own Thomas Senna describing why Candice Bergen should be included in the SNL Hall of Fame. So there's that. I'm of two minds here. I'm with Matti that she belongs, but it's like 30 years ago she would have been a slam dunk. Slam dunk. I just wonder if too much time has passed at this point for there to be a cohort of people that will, go to the wall for her. I think there should be, but I don't know that there will be. We will have to find out January 10th when voting opens. I am excited. I am truly excited. I'm also excited to introduce to you the sketch that we are playing for Candice Bergen's inclusion in the SNL Hall of Fame. This is the Anne Boleyn sketch that Matti and Thomas were talking about. So let's kick to that right now.
Oh, Norfolk, pray what news of my beloved husband, the king?
It bodes ill, Your Highness. The king demands your death.
I feared as much. What manner of execution is it to be?
The choosing is yours, my lady.
How so, Norfolk?
If you grant the king a divorce,
and renounce any claim to the throne, then you shall be beheaded. If you do not, then you shall be burned at the stake.
After I'm beheaded, what will happen to my head?
It will be placed on top of a wall for public display. People will be allowed to throw things at it in attempts to knock it off the wall.
How many throws will each person get before another person gets to throw?
3.
Will they be allowed to throw anything?
Within reason.
Would a rotten potato be considered reasonable?
I'm afraid it would, madam.
But I mean, a really rotten one, all mushy and such. And when my head is knocked off the wall, will the dirt and mud be brushed off my face before it is set back on the wall?
I'm not sure, Your Grace. I will check it out.
Thank you, Norfolk.
I will leave you now to weigh your decision.
Norfolk.
Yes, madam.
What if I grant the divorce, renounce the throne, but invoke the blessing of the Pope?
Then you should be drawn and quartered by 4 large horses. Then the quarters shall be drawn and quartered by 4 smaller horses. Then those quarters will be drawn and quartered by 4 frogs. After that, the quartering would stop and the mincing would begin.
I see. And my head?
Your head would be placed on a pike.
On a fish, Norfolk?
No, Your Highness, a spike pike.
Oh, Norfolk! What about the crows? Will they not attack my face?
We would put a wire cage over your head. It would keep out the crows, but smaller birds would be able to shoulder the way through the bars.
And I suppose yellow jackets could get through.
Yes, madam.
And June bugs?
Yes, but June bugs really wouldn't do any harm. They just sort of crawl around on your face.
Could a small scarecrow be attached to my forehead?
Again, I will check into the matter, Your Highness. But now, I will take my leave.
Norfolk.
Yes, Your Highness.
What if I just do everything they ask?
In that case, your head will be chopped off, and then it will be shot out of a cannon.
How many times?
I'm not sure. It seems to be really arbitrary.
And my body?
It would be folded up and also shot out of a cannon.
Would my head ever be shot at my body?
It might, Your Grace.
Yeah. And what happens to my head after that?
It would be wrapped up like a present and sent anonymously to a stranger. The royal entourage would hide in the bushes to see the expression on the stranger's face when he opened it.
Norfolk, you may inform the king I have made my decision. I will grant the divorce. I will renounce the throne and have my head cut off.
Very well, madam. Now, is that the one where we put your head on the wall? I'm lost.
Yes, that's the one.
I will take my leave now, Your Highness.
Norfolk.
Ah, yes, Your Highness.
The executioner. Is he skilled?
Very skilled, madam. He has been sent for from Calais.
I forgive you.
execution of Anne Boleyn took 6.5 hours and 3 axes and was one of the bloodiest in royal history. At one point, Anne Boleyn cried out that she would rather be burned at the stake, but it was decided to carry on. Later, her head was placed atop a pike, which swam away, never to be seen again.
That is dynamite. That was dynamite. That's a great sketch. I can't argue with Matti that it's, what did he call it? He called it Python worthy or Python-esque or something along those lines. And yeah, I tend to agree. Very absurd and wordy and a lot of fun. And Candice Bergen is along for the ride. She's carrying some weight in this one. So there's that. I want to thank Matti Price for popping by today to regale us with tales of Candice Bergen from Matt Ardill and Thomas Senna. Thank you so very much. And please, on your way past the Weekend Update exhibit, won't you turn out the lights? Because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.